Hi friends, welcome back to Sew Honeybee and part 4 to the Sophisticated Clutch Sew Along. For the most part, I sew alone in my sewing room, except for the little puppy behind me. You may have noticed or heard her barking during the videos. I do have to say how happy and thrilled I was to see so many of you join me for this sew along. Even though I'm alone here in my sewing room, I feel like all of you are with me. This video, being part 4, is the end of our sew along. And just like before, I will be going live on Facebook on May 1st this time. That's a Sunday. And I will be drawing the winners for the grand prizes. The grand prizes are as follows. There will be 2 winners for $25 in shop credits for my punkbroidery, as well as whimsical fabric design. Now, So Weird Fabrics has one $25 shop credit for a grand prize winner. But don't forget, So Weird Fabric has given all of us a coupon code for the month of April as well. So all of us can be winners. Now, to be entered for the grand prize drawings on May 1st, number 1, you will have to enter or post your work in progress over in the Facebook group. Now, Jessie has left all those threads open, so it'll be easy for you to find. I can't wait to see who wins. So now let's go over to the sewing machine and get started. Now, this is where we left off on part 3. So now what I want to do is I want to put my interior and exterior right sides together, and my 2 outer pocket lining pieces right sides together. Now, when I clip these, I really want to make sure that these seams really match up with each other. And I want to put a heavy clip there and one right on each of the 2 sides, so that I know when I get to sewing here, those areas are not going to move on me. So I want to come to the other side and do the same thing. I want to clip my bottom corner. Actually, this would be also a top corner. Okay. Now I want to put a clip all the way in the middle, making sure that my sides are really meeting up with each other. Okay, and now I want to do the same thing to my pocket lining pieces, making sure everything lines up right with itself. So now I have all this clipped, making sure my edges are all right with each other, and the same thing up here. In our pocket lining, we are going to leave a portion of this open because this is how we are going to turn out our clutch. So now what I want to do is I want to drop my needle right at this seam using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I want to sew all the way across here and back stitch and stop right there. Then I want to do another stitching, which is a shadow stitch to reinforce this side. So I'm going to do that first. And again, that's at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to drop my needle right where I want it. Now, nothing is going to move, so I can now remove that clip in front. Now I'm not doing anything to the lining side yet. Now I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this seam one more time, doing a shadow stitch right outside of that stitch. So now let's turn our attention to the outer pocket lining. Now this seam here was 1/4 of an inch, but on this one I'm going to do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and leave my bottom open. Okay, and now I want to do the same thing to this side. Now it's easier to see here that we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on our exterior and interior, and then in our lining it's just slightly larger at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I want to go ahead and clip my corners. Now I want to turn my clutch right side out. Okay, now I've got this turning tool, which is pretty much just a dowel that I've softened out the edges and put a point on one end. Now I'm going to use this end first, especially at the corners, because I want to make sure that I don't poke through. That would be so awful. Okay, so I'm going to use the blunt end first to push out my corners. Okay, you see how these corners are a little bit rounded? I'm going to go ahead and take the pointed end and gently, very gently, just try and see if I can square up those corners a little bit more. Now this is where we put in our Decaville Heavy or Peltex, whichever stabilizer you're choosing to use. And it's easier if we roll it up, pull out our pocket lining, and put this in there, making sure that it goes right to the end and each corner as well. You really get it to fit in there the best you can. And if your seam allowances are all correct, this should fit in there just perfectly. Okay, so now you put my seam is right at the bottom where it should be, and everything looks really good. Okay, now here you have two options. So what you can do, if you feel that your machine will not sew through all of these layers, what you can do is you can put a rivet right here, a double cap rivet, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to hold down this gusset from coming out completely. But I am going to go ahead and top stitch mine. I'm going to put a couple of clips so that my gussets do not move. So I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch top stitching. Even though it's a top stitch, I'm going to sew it at 1/4 of an inch, not 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to hold the ties so that it will not create a bird's nest under there. You may need a hump jumper here to get through. Okay, and you can see that that went through there just fine with my machine. So now I'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now I really want to clip my threads shorter, my tail ends to my threads, and then I'm going to burn them. Okay, and I want to do this just really fast. I am barely touching it. Because I do not want to burn my vinyl. Okay, so now I want to top stitch across here using a scant smaller than a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and now that's top stitched across there nicely. Okay, so now it's time to put on our female portion of the snap. So I have my snap and I have my washer. What I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to make sure my flap is right in the center, because you can see that my magnetic snap is just a hair off. So I want to make sure that my female portion of that snap will be a hair off also, so that they will be lined up right with each other. So I'm going to put a little bit of this ink, really press that down so that I can see that it is actually like a 1/16 of an inch off. Okay, so now let me grab my washer, put that right where I want it. I put that right there. Yep, that's where I want it. Now I want to put my hand inside of here. Now what I'm doing is I've got my hand in here so that I do not damage the other side, and I'm wanting to poke 2 holes through the vinyl and the decaville so that when I put my snap, which is here, that snapper really works good. Okay, so now I want to put my snap on here, and because it's going through the decaville also, I don't have to put anything to reinforce that on the back end. Then I'll put my washer. And now I want to be able to see in there to make sure that I have that right. And I'll use my turning tool to make sure those prongs are down. Okay, put these back on here. My pocket lining back inside of there. Okay, that looks really good. It's really centered on there and the whole thing. Okay, so now I want to take my gussets and fold them out and clip them. Do the same thing to the other side. Okay, and you can see there that our gussets are vinyl on the outside, and then waterproof canvas on the inside, exactly the way we wanted it. Okay, now I want to sew my gussets using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both ends. Do the same thing to this side. Now let's grab our lighter again. Just tap those threads. Okay, now I want to push these to the inside where I guess it should be. Okay. Wow, I really like the way that looks. Now, it's waterproof canvas on the inside and vinyl on the outside. I like the way that came out. Now I want to get my pocket lining out. Slightly, not all the way, but slightly push out my ends. So this point here will be straight. And now I'm going to fold it over both ends. Clip it. Now remember, this is a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so it's a little bit more than the 1/4 inch. Okay. Now go ahead and close this up. You may want to change out your thread and everything if you're using a different pocket lining like I am. But since it's going to be all the way down at the bottom, I'm okay with that. Okay, so now I need to grab my grommet pieces because I'm not going to be using a vinyl strap or a waterproof canvas strap. I'm going to be using a chain. So I need to add my grommets to the tops right here for that. On the bottom of page 28, she gives you full instructions on how to install your grommets. Okay, so now I'm going to reinforce that hole now that I've got my grommet tool set. Okay, and it cut the hole really nicely. Let me go over here now. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get freight check, put it on this side too. Okay, so those are the holes complete for our grommets. And now this is our outside grommet, our exterior. And then the thinner one goes on the inside. Okay, so now you will take your exterior and put it through that hole there. Making sure all the fabric is on the sides there. And then you will take your interior piece and put it on there like that. And then use either your rivet press with the grommet dies or your grommet tools to attach this grommet on there. Okay, there you can see I have the grommets. And so now I'm going to okay, so now even though I'm using a chain strap for this bag, I'm going to also make a secondary strap. I have a largemouth slider. Okay, this largemouth is wider or taller than your regular slider because it's specifically made for thicker fabrics like a vinyl. Then I have 2 swivel clasps. Now each of these are for 1 inch strapping. So now I'm going to fold the 2 long sides on themselves, wrong sides together, and put a crease all the way down. And see, now what we're going to do is we're going to fold these 2 edges in on themselves to the center and then fold them again. And then we will top stitch on both sides. So I don't want double stick tape right in this corner here, nor do I want it right in this edge. Okay, so now I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just put it down the center of where I'm going to be folding it. See how it's down the center? And, you know, if you're using cotton or a fabric that you can press, you can just press this into place, and then you don't have to use the double stick tape. This here is a very heavy-duty magnet, and what it is for, it is to do a straight seam. I want my top stitching to be right perfect. So I have this magnet here, and the distance between this edge here and the needle is going to be 1/8 of an inch. So I can just go ahead and just top stitch this all the way down, and it will turn out just perfectly every time. Okay, and now you can see that that strap is sewn perfectly all the way down. And now I can take this off, and what I usually do is just put it on my machine, and then I put my pointer tools and my scissors and stuff like that on it. Now I want to take my strap and my slider, okay, and you can see how there's definitely a top and a bottom to this. See how the center bar, how it has those hooks that come around? That is the bottom. This is the top. So I want to put it through and then put it through the other side. And now you can either sew across here or you can add a rivet or whatever you want to do. It's your choice. And another thing I want to point out to you, you see how because we use that magnet, you see how everything lines up very nicely here? So that's another reason why I really like using that magnet for my straps. Now I'm going to sew 2 lines here, making sure that my swivel clasp is completely out of the way. And I think I ran out of bobbin. I can't believe on this, so close to the end. Okay, so now I want to take my lighter and I want to burn thread ends. And since I ran out of bobbin, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish this off with rivets so that I can show you both ways. Okay, so now I have my rivets. And now let me get this side here. Now I just want to put one in the center. Let's see. So now, oops, I'm going to put my rivet through there. Put my cap on. And then set it. Okay, so there's my rivet on there like that. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make sure that this does not fold. So I want to put it like this, and I want to put my swivel clasp so that it is going on with my clasp on this side. Okay, so that this, when it goes through, this is the wrong side, it goes up the wrong side and down the right side, so that this swivel clasp is on the outside. Okay, you see that? And it is not twisted at all. Okay, so now on this side, I want to get the swivel clasp and put it through there. Fold it down on itself. Okay, and I want to put a clip. And I add a clip to both ends to make absolute sure that it does not move. So this is what our strap should look like. You have your right side. On this side, I've sewed it with, and then I put a rivet. On this side, you have your slider going up and through. The wrong side of your strap is in the inside. Okay, going all the way on this end, you have one swivel. Okay, one swivel clasp. Then going on this side, you have your second swivel clasp. Okay, so now let me put this going this way. And now I want to add 2 rivets right here. So I want to make sure that I put my rivet hole right in the center. Okay, then I want to put, on the right side, I want to put the male end of my rivet. Even though they're double caps, that's just a habit of the way I do it. Put my cap on this side. It's hard with fingernails, but it can be done. Okay, now that I have one of them on there, I can take that off. Okay. And put your other rivet cap on. Now let me really put these on. Okay. Okay, so there's our strap all complete. And here you can see how it will go really long, or you can shorten it and it'll be just as long as you want it. Now, thank you so much again for joining me. I really, really enjoyed making this clutch with all of you. Okay, until next time. Bye.